If I play for you, you expect. And I can play with these expectations, and of course, composers do.
As pianists, we're always playing with the expectations of our listeners, and one of the core ways that we do that is through phrasing. Now, if you've studied piano for a while, you've probably heard endlessly that it's essential to phrase the music that you're playing, but what does that really mean?
Our beloved instrument, it decays really, really quickly, so we want to elongate the sound as much as possible.
When you really think about it, phrasing, if you look at its exact definition and its denotation, it's how are smaller units within larger structures, right?
Today we're going to hear from a few Tonebase artists about how they think about phrasing, how to phrase some particular moments in Mozart, Chopin, Brahms, and Schubert, and how we can begin to think about this topic in our practicing.
So what I'm doing is basically not telling you how to express it, but talking about the tools that open the door for your own expression.
Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and remember that the full version of all of these lessons is available on Tonebase Premium, the platform that makes videos like this possible. Be sure to check it out by clicking the link below to get started. Without further ado, let's go!
How do you actually phrase something, right? If you talk about what someone said at work or at dinner, you say, oh, they phrased this in a weird way or in a negative way or in a positive way. It's also a way of communicating, right? It's a way of putting something in a specific light based on how you say it.
Perhaps the most important when you put things together and play in both hands is that you imagine that you're painting phrases rather than playing them vertically. You always want to think about the imagery of a paintbrush or something similar that would slide across a surface and that you would not naturally use to go up and down like this when you're playing, even when you're playing chords as an accompaniment.
The physical and the musical are intimately connected and form one organism with one influencing the other.
Not only do we have texture to try to elicit images and feelings through how we're actually touching the instrument, but then we also have the power of showing how each individual voice really wants to communicate this specific idea. And that's what phrasing really is for us.
Brahms' second intermezzo from Opus 118 is a really lovely example of musical expectations that are thwarted. In this case, we're in A major. We start with okay, our expectation is eventually. This seems to cause a compositional problem in the piece because we start with this, but we don't get that. Instead, he gives us it's do, but it's in the wrong register and with the wrong harmony. Now, I say wrong, not because he's done anything syntactically or grammatically or musically or expressively incorrect. It's wonderful, but it's leaving us unfulfilled in some ways. So in this sense, as the composer, or perhaps as the listener, or perhaps as the performer, we have a built-in tonal expectation of resolution. Where do we get it? Not until the end. With this overarching goal in mind, we now have a trajectory for the entire movement. We have a choice to make at our closing cadence. What would we choose to voice? What do we choose to bring out?
I am not a great singer by any means, but the idea is that when I sing something, I'm focusing on two ideas. One is where do I have to breathe and where do I not have to breathe? And two is where does my voice naturally get louder, softer? Where is it that it wants to get louder or it struggles to get louder or vice versa? And a lot of times it'll also go across our vocal breaks, so it'll make it even that much more poignant of kind of the actual stretch that it takes to get to that higher note. And whenever I breathe, I really realize that that's maybe where the phrase is breathing, right?
There's always a very beautiful bel canto which Chopin does, and I notice he loves using this. It's a kind of operatic quality. You can think of an opera singer singing something like. Give yourself real time before placing some note like this. I mean, this is, I would say, a tension point. Identify these tension points very early on. I would say in the first piece of this nocturne, one of the most important things is to find the notes which have the most emphasis, and then the rest, how do you build up to that, or how do you decay out of that? And this is one of them. Here we're already showing the D flat major chord. It's almost a little foreshadowing of what is to come. So show it with the left hand, because suddenly the left hand is also much deeper than B flat. Here we are here. Here we have something, again, very new. In some ways, I always think of rubato as not being, bar to bar. Some people think of rubato as being like in the very beginning of a bar, we can either take time or go faster, and then the end, we make it up. It can be much broader than that. You can think of it in 2-bar phrases. You can think of it even in like 4-bar phrases in the end when things get more advanced. And sometimes it might be just in the middle of a bar. For example, when we did this whole... Here, we come back with the time. So it's very flexible. There's no mathematical thing which say that rubatos have to be within a certain amount of time. It really depends on the phrase.
Sometimes it actually serves the music to have a shorter phrase. This example that I have found is Schubert's Opus 90, number 3 in G flat major, the impromptu, the beautiful, famous impromptu. And I chose this example because if we're going to talk about phrasing and vocal music, this is as vocal as it gets. This could basically be a German lied. And so let's take a look at it. I'm going to play it once, perhaps the way that we're accustomed to hearing it, which is with beautiful, long, stretched out phrases. Let's try it. Right? So we have these long, beautiful, stretched out phrases that I will not argue with as being incredibly gorgeous, right? However, as a little experiment, I think this song actually works really well with the text, Liebst du Schönheit. So let's try that same text in this song. Of course, I know that Schubert didn't write this particular piece with that text in mind, but why don't we just try it once as an experiment? You can decide for yourself whether or not that works, whether or not that's at all close to what Schubert intended, but you cannot argue with the fact that this particular piece is incredibly syllabic. It has really that art song feel to it. And so whether it's this text or another text, I think we can keep an open mind about what he might be imagining here, kind of like a song without words situation. Let's just try to play it once with that in mind, without any singing.
think sometimes that nobody is better at writing vocal music than Mozart. Schubert gives him a run for the money, but Mozart is tops in my book. The rests here are very, very crucial to the beauty of the melody. And it's always important to remind pianists that in playing Mozart, one not only plays the notes, one also must play the rests. Mozart himself said this in his own letters to his father, that the rests are not some sort of disconnect or pause between the melody, but an integral part of the music itself. So I always feel that very, very much with my own phrasing and breathing when I play the piano. I'm very well aware of the 2 bars here and the conclusion of that note, and then the lifting of the arm. So we can hear and to some extent show the audience that there is that pause and breath. Same here. Staccato. Very important rest to stretch just slightly. And some free rubato here, which means that we must return to the tempo.
What I also do, and I wanted to point it out, is that the last note, the half note, the C, I don't consider to be an end note. It completes a group of notes, but it also, the sound, that you have to make a sound there that will want to continue into what's coming next. Otherwise the music sound kind of chopped. So whenever I come to something like that loud, whether it's loud or soft, I fully express it. Because even with the pedal, if I just stop it, finish it, it's like starting again. This is one of the elements, between the shaping and tone production that we express every note, and we express it in a way that whether it's an end of something, I don't think of ending as ending in this context, but rather that ending is also a beginning. How is it going to go to what comes next? But those are the elements, the basic elements in tone production. This is the craft of it. This is what allows us then also, when the arm is always moving across and over long notes and rests and so on, it also allows for that kind of physical continuity to give you a better control over rubato. I find that very often people exaggerate rubato because something else is not happening. But when you have the control, the skill, I call these things really skills of the tone production, of the shaping, you begin to have control over timing.
All of the lessons that you saw today are available on Tonebase Premium, an incredible platform that has stuff for pianists of all levels, ages, and abilities. Check out Tonebase Premium by clicking the link in the description below to get started.